Alright, so this is a tutorial series that I'm making to help students who are new to Science Olympiad and new to the Codebusters event specifically, to help them get an understanding of all the different cipher types and hopefully be in a position to succeed in the event. I'll start off by going over some of the most popular resources that students use to prepare. First one is the sarli.org wiki page for Codebusters. It basically just goes over the format of Codebusters tests, and it goes over how to solve all the different cipher types. And at the end, there's also a list of other resources that you can use. And the second resources that I would highly recommend checking out is the TOBE's website for Codebusters. Using this website, you can create your own Codebusters tests and ciphers that you can print out and solve on your own in paper. My partners and I use this resource a lot, where we would create tests for each other and we'd solve each other's ciphers. And it was really a good resource for me to uh, learn how to solve these ciphers really quickly. For this tutorial specifically, I'll be going over the aristocrat cipher. I'll go over basically how the cipher works, what are some good approaches and methods that you can use to solve it, and at the end I'll solve some ciphers on my own so you can get an understanding of how I approach solving it myself. Alright, first off, how does the aristocrat cipher work? Basically you have all of these jumbled up letters called ciphertext, and words in the ciphertext are separated with spaces, and you have punctuation. Basically, the ciphertext is structured like a regular sentence in the English language, except that all the letters are jumbled up, meaning that all the instances of a letter in the ciphertext decode to a different letter when they become plain text. And the plain text is just the decoded message, like an actual sentence that makes sense. For example, you could say that all the instances of the letter R decode to T, and all the instances of I decode to O, and so on. And the decoded letters have to be different than their ciphertext. So you can't say, in this aristocrat cipher, the letter Y also decodes to Y. That's not possible in an aristocrat. And yeah, I can show you a fully solved aristocrat as well. You notice that all the instances of O decode to T, C becomes H, F becomes S, and so on. And when you encounter an aristocrat in a Codebusters test, you're going to see two things at first. You're going to see the ciphertext, which I mentioned before, all the jumbled up letters with the punctuation and everything. And two, you're going to see what's called a frequency table right below it. And this frequency table is very important for two reasons. Number one, it shows how often each letter in the ciphertext appears. How many times does it show up? And the reason why this is so useful is that letters and frequency in the English language, it follows a very common pattern where specific letters show up way more often than others. Specifically, the letters E, T, A, I, O, N, S, and R are the most common letters in the English alphabet in order, meaning that E is the most common, T is the second most, A is the third, and so on. And this can be very useful when you start solving aristocrats, because you can look at the frequency of the ciphertext, so you can see that O is a very common letter in this cipher, and based on that you can guess that, oh yeah, it's probably one of these letters up here. Same for X and I and D. You can see that their frequencies are pretty high, and based on that you can assume that it's probably one of these common letters. And the second reason why frequency table is useful is that you can use it to keep track of what letters decode to what. Especially on paper, it's very useful to use this if you're new to the event, in order to keep track of what letter becomes what. Now, one of the most important things that you need to understand in order to get good at solving aristocrats quickly is understanding that Patterns are one of the main things that you can use to your advantage to quickly figure out what specific letters to code to. And as you solve more and more aristocrats, you're going to be able to notice more and more patterns that help you solve the cipher quicker and quicker. And one thing I definitely recommend doing uh, as you start off, solving aristocrats, is keeping track of common pattern words that you notice when you solve ciphers in some sort of like a Google Doc. And how you can do this is you can write down these common pattern words. One of these I would say is the word people. That's definitely one of the more popular pattern words that you learn if you're new to Codebusters. And the reason I would call this a pattern word is there are a lot of features to it that are pretty distinct and recognizable when you see them in ciphertext. Like you see the two E's here and here. And the reason that would be very recognizable is you would see that the ciphertext for it is very common in the frequency table. And then you would see two other letters that appear twice as well. So when you put this in your Google Doc with pattern words, you should structure it where you have the pattern word and right next to it you have what its pattern looks like. So in this case, it would be like A, B, C, A, D, and then B. And yeah, so as you go about solving more and more ciphers, you'll recognize more and more patterns. And in order to get good at solving aristocrats quickly, you need to combine the two parts of what I mentioned before, the frequencies, the positioning of letters, and then also these like patterns that you notice over time. So in order to help you understand how to apply these different concepts that I mentioned before, in order to solve an aristocrat cipher, I'll go over how to solve this one. First thing I notice when I look at this aristocrat is that the letter N is really common. So based on that, the fact that it's way more common than all the other letters, I would assume that it decodes to the most common letters in the English alphabet, either E or T. Something else that I notice is the letter N, it appears in the middle of words, it appears near the end. You see it as a double letter here, which means it appears back to back. And you see these one gap instances where there's like an N gap and then another N. And usually as you solve more and more aristocrats, you notice that these types of instances, more commonly than not, they decode to E's usually in those instances. And yeah, after I do that, the next thing I notice is this OSN right here. And the reason I'm noticing it is because the letter O appears pretty common compared to some of the other letters. And also that it's the first word in the sentence, in this new sentence. And the first word in the sentence, one of the most common first words in a sentence is the word the. And that's also something else I want to mention. You should also keep track of what are common words in the English language, what are the frequencies of the letters that are in it. Words like you, he, is, the, as I mentioned before, certain contractions that, as I showed in the Scioli wiki, you can view those as well. And yeah, so now that I got the next thing that I'm noticing is this two-letter word here, O and I. Since I know that the word starts with the letter T, the only other letter that the second letter can be is the letter O, which creates the word two. And now, something else that I notice is up here, you have this 5-letter word, you have two E's in the middle, and the letter Y is fairly common, it appears 5 times, and the letter M is kind of common, it appears 4 times. So I'm thinking these two letters are probably pretty common, and when you do a lot of aristocrats, you'd probably get this pattern never that shows up a lot. And that's another pattern word that I'd recommend putting in your common pattern Google Doc or whatever. The word never. and the word the. Those are the two words that I've noticed from the cipher that are pretty common. Next, what can we go for next? We can see that the letter F is really common. It appears 9 times. And you can see it appears as a one-letter word. And more often than not, the only one-letter words that you'll ever encounter are the words A and I. And looking at, where it appears, how this is kind of looking like motivation, which I already noticed. I'm thinking this is A. And something else I'd like to mention is that endings of words are also very useful when it comes to aristocrats. So like tion is a common ending, ing is a common ending. And as you solve more and more ciphers, you'll notice those endings a lot more. And what do I notice next? When I look at this sentence, the second one, this looks like it's going to be the real. So I'm going to fill that out next. What else am I noticing? I'm noticing these three letters here, L, Y, Z. I noticed that L is pretty common too. So I'm thinking this may be an ing ending, purely based off the fact that L is a pretty common letter in the cipher, and I already have an N here. And once you solve enough letters, you can start to fill out words purely based on, vibes or like intuition. Like this is motivation. This is probably 4. At the bottom here, you can see excitement, so you can fill that out. Is here, placing, not placing, sorry. Why? Because I see money here. And then you can solve out the rest of the cipher. Money was never a big motivation for me, except as a way to keep score. If I click submit, it's the right answer. And yeah, you can see I've been recording this for a while. But yeah, so I would say definitely the takeaways from solving this cipher are that you use the frequency to your advantage. You use specific pattern words to your advantage, like never was a big help to us. The word the here was a big help to us. And after solving a cipher, I would definitely write down some of the pattern words that you didn't notice as well that you can use later on. Like one thing I'm noticing here is excitement is an interesting pattern word that you may use because you have these E's all over the place. You have this ENT ending with 3 common words back to back to back. You have motivation with the TION ending. That's also really useful. Except here, you have these 2 E's. And as you write down more and more pattern words, you solve more and more ciphers, you'll be able to solve ciphers quicker. And yeah, let's move on to the next cipher. All right, so this is the second cipher that we're going to solve for the tutorial. The first thing that I notice is this one-letter word here, I. And this is very useful because if you remember, like I mentioned before, in an aristocrat, a letter cannot decode to itself. So the letter I here cannot decode to the letter I. And since we know that A and I are the only one-letter words most of the time, we know that this I decodes to A. Next, I see this 3-letter word here, ISS. And since we have a double letter, the only word that makes sense here is all. And that's a very important pattern I'd say to learn. I would write that down. ALL. That's a pattern word that I would write down in the Google Doc of pattern words that I keep track of. Next thing I would look at is the frequency table and see that O is a really common letter. So if we go to O, right now I see this O space O and then 3 letters here. This kind of looks like an ing to me. I don't want to immediately guess that though, just because I isn't one of the most common letters, but it is up there. We can go to Z as well, since that's also a common letter. Um, we see that IT is a two-letter word here, and we see that Z is at the beginning and end of a word. This could be T, this could be S, this could be a lot of things. And when I'm kind of stuck, like I am here, where I don't exactly know where to go, I it's fine to like try your hunches, I guess. And if it doesn't work, you can always backtrack. But keep in mind that on paper, it does take a while to backtrack from a wrong idea. So I'll try the ing thing that I mentioned before, and it doesn't look exactly right, especially with this word. So I think I'll backtrack from that. And uh, if I put I here, I do like I have ILOIA. That looks like a pattern that makes sense. Something else that I notice is that we have PD and then we have IJD here. So we have D's at the end of both of these words. And this may be kind of a long shot, but it is a pattern that I notice a lot in ciphers, and that's we are. And it seems to kind of make sense based off of what I'm seeing right now. What else can we put? Now Z at the beginning and end, it looks more like it's going to be an S than a T because this becomes series. You have this IES ending, which is pretty important. And now we're kind of at the point where you can guess really long words too. Like I see impossible here. That word's impossible. Now over here, you see the word brilliantly. And everything just kind of falls into place. So we got opportunities, situations. I see with here, series of great, brilliantly disguised, faced. So we are all faced with a series of great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And I would definitely say that that's more of like a difficult cipher, definitely, especially because there weren't any contractions, and there were a lot of long words. But yeah, I'll do one more example cipher, preferably one with a contraction in it, so I can show off kind of how that works. And yeah, here's one. So we have a contraction word where we have three letters, an apostrophe, and then two letters after it. And more often, I think the only letter this can be is E, based off of how these apostrophe two-letter contractions work. This E letter isn't that common. UKV, you notice that UKV shows up here and it shows up down here. So based off of that, I know that it's the word U. And since this letter isn't common, I don't think this is your. I'm more confident that it's you've. But we can always change that later. You, and then we have a two-letter word after it. I think that word is probably do. What else? We see this letter C here. It shows up pretty common. It has a double letter here. So immediately I'm thinking T because it's really common. And if we put T here, then we get attitude right now, and that helps us out a lot. And now we're at the phase again where you can kind of guess words based on intuition, like ability here, ability is, you have motivation to the right here. And based off of that, we get that this cannot be you because we can't use the same letter twice because we've used E decodes to V and we've also used G decodes to V. So since I'm confident about motivation, I don't think it's V here. And now we figured out it's R, capable of doing, this kind of looks like determines what. And yeah, we've solved another cipher. And the main thing I definitely point out here for solving this cipher is that your was a very helpful pattern. And whenever you see a contraction, uh, definitely look at that first in a cipher because that will help you get a lot of letters more often than not. Something else that I'd notice is this pattern word here, attitude, is definitely a pattern word that you would write down in your pattern sheet because you have these three T's. You have a double T here and you have a T right after that. And T is a very common letter too, which would help you find this pattern word even better. You have an ES ending here, that's very useful. You have another TION ending, that shows up a lot. And if you look at the frequencies, T was pretty common, I was pretty common, E was pretty common, O was pretty common. So yeah, the thing about the frequencies were E, T, A, I, O, N, S, R, all these letters being very common, you see that a lot in the frequency table for a lot of ciphers. And yeah, just to end off this video, I'd say if you want to get good at aristocrats, just grind as many as you can. Definitely use Tobes in order to print out your own custom ciphers. Help out friends who are also doing Codebusters and make tests for each other. It's a very good resource. And check out Cipher Arena too. I made this website in order to help students who are new to Codebusters. And it has a bunch of extra features like leaderboards. You have a multiplayer mode where you can play with friends online. It's kind of like a gamified experience for Codebusters. So I definitely recommend checking out this resource as well.